So we're going to get started in the very first one, which we already talked about. So I'm sure some of you remember this one. So a little history on this game again. Now, there are other games that came out around the same time. I only picked this one for two reasons. One, because we only have so much time to talk about the different stages of gaming. And the second reason is I'm trying to pick the ones that were most popular at that time. Okay, so this one was very popular when it first came out. It was also the first video game I had in our house, and we went crazy over it. It was a lot of fun. No one had ever seen anything like it. All we had before that were card games and board games like Monopoly and Risk and Sorry. When we played this game, it was not unusual at the time. It was really cool at the time because we had to use these dials here to turn to be able to move these rackets, or however you want to call them. I'm going to disappear from time to time because the screen is much bigger than everything else. Yeah, well, we played a lot of tic-tac-toe then too. So this was the first one. This one was Pong, okay? Pong was the name of the game, and it was one of the very first games that came into our living rooms, one of the very first video games, and it was obviously one of the most popular games at that time. Bought the machine, and that was that. That was the game. So, moving on. This is one of the very first things that happened. After that, we had a little upgrade. We had what is called, remember what this is? Some of you older students or followers here, maybe you can remember what this was. I had one, so I'm giving away my age here. Not that I have to. It's pretty obvious. I had one of these. They're pretty cool too. We came with one of these joysticks, they were called. It was just one handle, one button, and that was it. Fire away. But what was unique about this, and again, how it improved, was that now you could put games inside here. They were called cartridges. So you could have one machine, and you could buy different games to play. So that was like, wow, you could have a collection. You know, some kids had 10, 12 different games. It was like, oh my God, space age. Yeah, you're old enough to know. Atari, yeah, this one was called the Atari, I think it was Atari 226 or 2600 or something like that. But Atari was one of the big players in the beginning of the video game industry. All right, so Atari it was. Now, again, Atari was one of the biggest, okay, and most, more famous, I guess if you want to call it, most used. There were also other ones like ColecoVision and Intellivision, and there are some others that I can't recall all the names. But of course, everything has competition, right? So they weren't the only one on the block. There were more. All right, so along the Atari came in, that started changing how people were gaming in their house, and it was stepping stones to what was yet to come. Okay, so after the Atari, okay, so not just yet after the Atari. I gave you the answer here a little earlier on purpose. But as we talk about gaming, the world of gaming, and how it grew and where it is today, there's another word for it. Kind of like fisheries and agriculture. Some people just call it farming. Forestry, the lumber. This is the business, the field of this kind of work. There's a word for that we call it. Even the gaming. You know, we say the gaming is $100 billion a year. Okay? What is the word I'm looking for here that we want to know? Because it's going to be in our reading later. How do it could be finance, it could be stock market, it could be, what other kind of, education? Could be many one of them. Starts with an I. Anybody got that one yet? No answers yet? Okay. All right. Industry. Yeah. We call it usually an industry, you know, the gaming industry, farming industry, which most people call it, or it could be the cattle industry, could be agriculture industry, fishing industry, commonly known as fisheries, same like forestry, the lumber industry, wood industry, forest industry. Industry is kind of the word that umbrellas everything in that field, okay, everything that they do in that area. IT industry. I don't know, IT would be an industry. There's a lot of industries. Coffee industry. There you go. All right, so industry was the word I was looking for here. Let's go to the next one. So last one we were talking about was Atari, and now we're going into talking about the gaming industry, of course, which is our topic, right? The world of gaming. So here we are playing Atari in our living rooms. Our parents and grandparents are thinking, you're going to rot your brain. They think it's the worst thing that was ever invented. But of course, that's not quite true. And that wasn't the end of it, of course. After Atari started making their games, other companies, like I think it was Coleco, and there are many of them, and I can't talk about all of them today, but they started making these video games in big box. You go, video game machine. I'm pretty sure that's what they were called. And you know, they had a controller as well. These ones had now 2 or 3 or 4 buttons for jump and fire and spin and all kinds of different functions. And they became very, very popular. And you had rows of them and rooms of them like this everywhere. Everywhere. A lot of them popped up in shopping centers, malls, plazas. Where I grew up, there were these long hallways as you came into the mall, the plaza. And the walls were just lined games. And of course, it drew a lot of kids, a lot of teenagers and young adults were coming to play these video games. And they were worth a lot of money. Yeah, good one. Did you see this before? Are you sure are you cheating? Yeah, that's what it was, arcades. And they made a lot of money because to play the arcade, you had to put quarters. And a quarter in dung would be like, $1 is 23,000, so a quarter of that would be, what, 8,000 dung to play a game? So yeah, $1 would buy you 4 games. And of course, when you start playing, you always die fast, so you spend more money. So yeah, we always had our pockets full of change. We were definitely saving our change when we were kids so we could go to the arcade. And it was a lot of fun. So these were everywhere. And again, driving parents and grandparents crazy. All right, so what do we have after the arcade? This is when the games started getting better and better. Yeah, okay, so again, some of the games now that came out in arcade. Frogger right here. This was one of the arcade games. Arcade has another meaning too, but we're just gonna stick to gaming today. Frogger was big. Again, just some of the big ones. There were other ones like Ghost and Goblins and Contra and this. Every time I check into it, I say, oh, I remember that game. I remember that game. Yeah, but I can't put them all here.
So you say 100% me, no chip.
100% you, huh? Were you here last week? All right, one of the ones that made millions as well. This video game, if anybody can name this game, it's legendary. So is this one. Yeah, this one's Pac-Man. That's that little yellow mouth that keeps chomp, 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 eating all the pellets and the cherries, running away from the ghosts. Yeah, this also originally in the beginning, it was supposed to be designed to attract more girls to play video games, but it was just a big success either way. Guys, girls, everybody played it. It was very, very popular. So you had games like Pac-Man, Space Invaders. There we go. Space Invaders, Pac-Man, Frogger. Like I said, there was there was Ghost and Goblins. There were Tetra, I think it was called. What else was there? Oh God, so many. And these games ruled the arcade. So Atari and them weren't doing as well because more people were now going to the arcades to play because the games were better. Right? So again, it will evolve some more in this story. All right, so what happened after this? From these games, yeah. One of the things we're going to talk about towards the end is, of course, the advantages and disadvantages of gaming. Right? And there's a lot of mixed reviews on this. But in my opinion, and many of the people in the industry, there are advantages and disadvantages to gaming. So we're going to get into that a little later. But one of the big things and the big arguments, people would argue about or debate about video games is that how could it be good for you if you're staring at the TV and you're just sitting on the chair playing a game for hours, right? Makes sense. So some of the companies turned around and what they did is they created games that were more active. You had these kinds of games that came in later, I believe in the late 80s and early 90s. Later in the 90s, I'm sorry. It was in the 90s. These games came out and people had to dance. This guy's frozen, but that's okay. They would dance and it was active now. Companies like Nintendo, for example, came out with games that had the gamepad or joystick had sensors on it. So you could actually play tennis on the screen, but you had to make the motions to play. The games came out with golfing. It was another one. Boxing, all kinds of things like that. There were lots of activity games that came out as well. So that was another change in the game. There's still some more to come here. All right, let's see if we can get the next. Hey, Guppy, how are you? But it's not Guppy, it's Gappy, right? Gappy, yeah. Hello, Gappy. Just in time. This is about almost where we stopped last week and where we're starting again. So you timed this pretty good. So what was the name of this one? You guys remember? What was it? When you start dancing around?
Dance Fever.
It wasn't Dance Fever. It was... What was it? Dance... Or something dance. So we're not just Facebook, not just you. We got lag too. We're having a hard time getting to the next slide here. So, I'd complain. Bing Hua, hello Bing Hua. Huang? That's what it was. Dance Revolution. That's correct. That's good. There we go. We got it now. It's back. Dance Revolution. This was a big hit. I do remember in the 90s going shopping and seeing these kids hopping around and dancing around, and it was new. Evolving again. All right, so Dance Revolution was one of them. A lot more like it I saw as well. There was lots of guns as well, like where you actually held the guns and you had to shoot the screens everywhere, things like that. I remember a big one was Buck Hunter, I think it was, where you went hunting, trying to get ducks and deer and bucks. That was good too. Okay, so let's go to the next one here. All right, everything's back on track. So as we're talking about the evolution, as things are changing and growing and evolving, there's a word for that, and we're going to talk about that as well. But it's kind of like when you're watching the show, you have one frame, one picture, and then the screen switches to another one, right? Or you watch how our little iguana lizard up here is not moving. He's supposed to move. That was the plan. But see, he kind of turns into something and turns into something. Okay, so look at the dancing back here. You see how enjoy comes up, and then it fades away, and then we have the software. Okay, so that's a little different. The software is what we use to make these things change. That's one part of it. Like New Way, from being a language center on site with students coming to us and us running classes in a classroom, now we've evolved or changed or going through a phase where now we're starting to bring classes to you online, and almost all of our classes now are being taught online. So there's a word for how these things change. Oh, did it? So in 10 seconds, you'll know the answer. Just wait. No. All right. Let's put it up. It is transition, right? You can transition into a new job, transition with software, how things change into. It means the change of things, it's like evolve, but transition is a really good word to know. Okay, so transition was the one we were looking for here. Let's move on to the next one. Okay, so as we said, transition. First, we started out with games like Atari, right? There was one game, one box, and then they came out with one box cartridges that you could start playing different games with one system. And then some companies came along and they made big video game boxes, video game machines. So of course they had more technology and they could do more than the little home, what we call these things, which we'll talk about. So once video games were becoming so mainstream in shopping malls, and some places actually opened up what they're called gaming rooms. And that's what they would do. They would just fill it up with all kinds of games, maybe pool tables in some places, darts, anything to do with games for entertainment. During that time, yes, Tokyo. Hyokwe. Xbox, that's right. This is Gappy. Yes. This is an Xbox. This is a Nintendo. This is one of the older ones. Commodore 64. That was one too, yeah. Nintendos. This one was, if I remember, it was still a cartridge you put in. Still before the CDs. But these two were the newer ones. This is the newer Xbox, and then this one is the Sony PlayStation 2. But now we've had PlayStation 3. I believe we're on PlayStation 4 now. And Gappy, you're right. These are consoles. These are consoles here. Yeah, the pronunciation. Consoles. Consoles. Yeah. So this is what was happening with the video game world again. We had all these arcades, but behind the scenes, companies like at this time it wasn't Microsoft Xbox yet. At this time it was Nintendo, Sony, and there was another big one which I had. I had all of them. I'm a gamer. What can I say? I love my games. There was Sega of America. They were very big at that time too. They were actually my favorite then. But I don't think they're around anymore. They started creating new games that were better and cheaper, of course, than going to the arcades. And they were copying a lot of the games, getting the rights for these games. So now you didn't have to go put quarters in the machine anymore. You could just say, Mom and Dad, please buy me one of these consoles for Christmas. And then you could bug them every day of the week to buy new games. It was much cheaper for the kids and more convenient. Stay at home and play video games. So these consoles now we're starting to take over the video game world. Let's go to the next one here. All right, so now, again, transitions, the evolution of the gaming. Back on those, at that time, on the video arcades, the gaming machines, arcade games, we had games, of course, that were really, really huge. Space Invaders. Not much of a game today, of course, but they were what? Look at the format on these. Everything is flat. right? It's not like I'm walking to you and coming out, right? Everything was, there's a word for this. This is what I'm looking for. It's like the old Mario Brothers. It's like the old Pac-Man. It's like the Space Invaders, Contra, Asteroids, all these old games about dimensions now. Anybody tell me what it is? Look at this chart here with houses. You can't see the side. There's only two sides. You can't see. I almost gave you the answer there. Exactly. 2D graphics. Yeah, Tokyo, that's right. So this was another massive, huge, enormous step for the trend or the evolution of gaming, and how things transitioned into the next one. So we have 2D graphics, and this is really easy. The next one, the next evolution was I mean, come on. This is what we play now. Flying through buildings and going up over buildings and into spaceships and shooting people down the corridor and running into rooms and out of rooms. And these are not 2D. They are. I know you know. We're just going to wait for the answer. I'm sure it'll pop up in a second. But this is where we're into games now. I mean, the graphics are just real. You know, they look real. They look like they're right out of a movie. It's really incredible what they can do with these games now. Yeah. And that's exactly what it is. 2-dimension and 3-dimension. Right? The characters come to life. The places come to life. And this, again, was another huge step, another very large step for the gaming industry. 3D graphics. Get that one down if you guys are copying them, which you should be. Practice your sentences. Don't forget them. Graphic. And again, you keep that K, yeah? Graphics. Graphics. Fix. Block that air. Don't say graphic. Graphics. Graphics. All right. All right. So along with 3D graphics, of course, came some new, cooler games at that time. We had games where we could play football. We had games where we could play American football. The big one there was Madden football for the Westerners. In the Eastern countries, you don't play much American football, but you had FPS, right? The first-person shooter games. That changed a lot of things. Even games like Super Mario Brothers came out before they were 2D, and then eventually they became 3D. So the evolution was really some of the games that came out. There was Mario Brothers. There was American Madden football. There was FIFA football, which is very, very popular now. You see it all over the place. And this was a result, again, of having the new 3D graphic capabilities to make games even better and better than they were. So as you can see, it's come a long way since the late 70s and early 80s. It's come a very, very long way. All right, so what happens after this? Okay, so we've gone through the Ataris and those very first games that came out. Then we went into the arcades.
Tokyo noise? Ken, I can't believe you can go up to that.
I had every one of them in here. That's why I picked them. And a few more, but I won't talk about those. Right? We had the Ataris, we had the arcades, then we had the consoles that started becoming better than the arcade games, and then now we're getting into the PC games that are even, well, they're just off the chart. I mean, they look so real. You have games like League of Legends, and these games are just mind-boggling. They're just amazing when you see how incredible they are. But now that they're at that level, now what we're seeing is areas where you can join thousands of people and play. You're seeing companies like esports that have teams that players are making money playing now. I mean, again, it's just a small percentage of players that are making money. But this is happening. This is where the world of gaming is going, where it is today. And there's a word I'm looking for now. When you go to places like Garena, Twitch, I think Facebook has one now, and you have YouTube has one, and there's a few others as well that I hear about that I'm learning about now. Actually, what do we call these? Roadblocks. Yeah. Gaming platforms. That's exactly what we're looking for. The gaming platforms. This is again changing the world of gaming, because now from your living room you can now join communities where hundreds of thousands, I think there are 50 million members now playing on Twitch. Twitch now I think is majority owned by Amazon and Bezos. These platforms are changing a lot of things as well, and so it's just wow. It's one of the industries, as we said, industries in the world now. There was a little crash in the 70s in the beginning, which is often most things you try the first time, they don't usually work perfectly, but once you get going, you get better at it. And gaming is certainly one of those industries where the profits and the growth and how much it's been growing, yeah, it's just up. It keeps going. It just keeps going. It doesn't seem to want to slow down, and it just keeps getting better and better and better. So gaming platforms, absolutely. This is where a lot of it's at now. Yeah. So what do we got next? We got the gaming platforms. So we went through the history from the very beginning to where it is today. Now, of course, just like with my parents and my grandparents, it was all negative when I was a kid. But now we're kind of learning that there are some good things about gaming. So you can have some good results from gaming. They can be good for you in certain circumstances, different areas. So what I'm looking for now is another word, a combo of words. Like we can say the negative side of things or the positive side. We can say advantages or disadvantages. Advantages. There's another one that's much shorter that most people say. What do we call that? It means advantages and disadvantages. It means negatives and positives. What am I looking for? Because that's what we're going to call it when we're talking here. Anybody get that one yet? Not yet, huh? We had it in one of our classes recently, so I'm sure all the answers are going to come up at the same time from 12 of you. Advantages and disadvantages. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. Who got that? All right, so pros and cons, and it comes with a Z sound. Pros and, not an, and, slight little d, cons. Pros, positives, cons, the negatives, okay? So it's a lot easier than saying advantages and disadvantages. Just like TV and television, or fridge and refrigerator, or hippo and hippopotamus, or rhino and rhinoceros. Shortcut. Okay, pros and cons of gaming. Let's talk about those a little bit now. So what do we got up here first? Of course, we're going to talk about more pros than cons because I like gaming too. What's the first one? All right. What do you think these guys are doing? What do you see that is positive? A pro. Well, I'm not going to call it an advantage because maybe they're cheating. Maybe they have an advantage over their opponent, the competition, their opponent. But what do you see about these guys right now that they're playing here that you think could be something good? What do you see there? We get accused of not doing it enough. when we go to school or we're doing things around the house. Usually when it's something we're not very interested in, which kind of makes me think about some of the students who talk about You got an answer? And of course they're gamers. They don't look like elephants. Well, they're all wearing the same t-shirt. Probably. No, I'm looking for like an attribute. Something that they're doing. Not an attribute. Yeah. That's what I'm looking for. Concentration, right? Concentration, I believe, is this one, right? Concentrating? Concentration? That is another one too. Reflex, quick response, reflex, hand-eye coordination. These are some of the things that have apparently, through some tests, some surveys, or some tests, I guess, that it can improve your hand-eye coordination. It can improve your reactions. And it's a good example of concentration. When you're playing, you know, nothing bothers you. Sports, like on a team, a squad. Yeah, but you can do that playing football in the field too. You don't need video games to work together with your squad or your partners. So I'm not going to say that's a positive. No points there. Bah. All right, but what I wanted to say, it's a good example of something that happens with most kids these days, and adults. It's the same thing. And the example I want to use is like at school. You often talk about, oh, I'm good at math and I'm good at English, but I'm no good at history and I'm no good at geography. Wonder who I'm talking about. But that's not true at all. It's not that you're not good at it. It's that you don't concentrate on it, right? You're not focused on it because you don't enjoy it. It's not interesting. The subjects that you're good at is because you have an interest in it, right? It's just like some of the video games that you play. Some games you're really good at it. Well, guess what? You put 400 hours into it. Of course you're good at it. You're interested. You're staying concentrated. You're focused. But if it's a game you don't like Roblox, it's terrible. I'm no good at it. Am I really no good at it, but yet I'm really good at another game? No, it's not true. It's just something we put in our head. You're good at what you want to be good at, and you're bad at what you don't want to be good at. And that's all it is to it. So remember that next time you say, I'm no good at it. It's too hard. Ask yourself a couple of questions. What else do we got? Next one? All right, so this is another one too. If you're playing chess, I already gave you the word here. So it's not about the game, right? This is a very popular game. One of the oldest games in the world. Chess and checkers. But what do you learn when you play a game like this? What is it what abilities, what skills do you improve on by playing a game like this? It's kind of, again, some of the pros of gaming. It's funny because when I played Monopoly with my parents and my grandparents, or I played Risk with my grandparents, or cards, they used to say this is great exercise for your brain. Makes you think, makes you make decisions faster, helps you how to manage money playing Monopoly. But yet, it helps you make decisions too, because you have to make decisions really fast or someone's going to shoot you. For sure. Yeah, I think this one's strategies, right? This one's decisions. Okay, there's so many of them. It helps you make decisions, is right. Yeah. It helps your processing information. That is the one thing I personally, this is not comments of New Way or anybody else, it's just my belief. I do believe playing any kind of game, playing football out in the field, playing chess on a board, playing Monopoly, playing some video games. Not all, but most of them, they make you think faster because you have to react. And that's one thing I believe is a pro. Yeah, all right. So decision making is one that a lot of reports say help practice the brain, exercise the brain. What's next? Okay, so this one's not so much about our development. This is just about what we were talking about in the game, and I wanted to make sure for some of you that might be taking the vocabulary here and practicing, because the levels may be more starter or elementary. The word is about that transition and that elevation, how things get better and better and better. So this one is quite easy, but I wanted to add it to the vocabulary here. Has anybody got that one? If you keep practicing at something, you keep reading something, you're going to eventually get better at it. So there's a word for that. And you keep practicing football. Improvements, improve. Improve, improvement, increase, and what did Tokyo say? Progress. Yeah, progress is another one. Progress is a little different. It's like improvement, but it's used a bit differently. Progress could be you're trying to get to a goal, so you're getting progress towards that. Improvement might be used more when we're talking about something a skill you're trying to develop. Okay, you're improving in your football skills. You're progressing in your game or the levels. Yeah, they're very, very much the same, but often used a little bit different. Okay, so improve was the word I was looking for here. What do we have after improve? Just wanted to add that to the vocab here. So back to some of the pros of games, not just video games, but sport games outside, card games, things, the way to exercise your brain. Some of the skills and things that it'll help you do as well is to, you're thinking ahead. You're thinking, well, if I do this, they say a grand chess master has like 7 or 8 moves planned ahead, depending on what the opponent does. All right, so he's not just thinking, oh, I'll move here. He moves there, I'll go here. No, he's already thinking way ahead of what's going to happen in the game. What do we call that?
Plan.
Exactly. Planning. Yeah, absolutely. And that's a very important skill to have in life, because if you're always thinking of tomorrow only, you could have some shortcomings or some shortfalls. Yeah. You always want to try to think a little bit further in the head. Save for a rainy day, as my mom used to say. All right, so what do we got next here? We got planning. That's another one that it can help you with. This is the one I really like with some games, especially games like military games. Risk is one of them. Art of War. You really have to compete against other people by planning and thinking, and there's a word for that. And it's the same thing if you're running your football team and you're the coach or the manager, right? You have to not only plan, but you have to know their weaknesses and their strengths or tendencies, right? Things that they often do, in order to be able to put together a plan to make your plan work. But to actually act out the plan, you have to have all right, somebody's got this. To devise a plan is to have all right, gotta move on. Strategy, I believe, is this one, yeah? Yeah. Strategy is to be able to implement that plan. Strategy. Very important. And again, all kinds of games can help build strategy. Sports especially. Well, that's the thing too. Without a brain, you can't do any of this stuff. So you need a brain. for sure. Okay. What do we got next? Right. So some of the other advantages of the gaming here was the ability to do sports, right? You can have these virtual goggles on and you could be boxing, you could be doing all kinds of stuff like this. You could be golfing, you could be playing tennis. What other advantages could we have for playing some games? You could be getting exercise inside, playing a video game, as opposed to not going out in the rain, instead running. But you could be running at home. This one, yeah, this one is virtual reality when you actually start visually seeing instead of watching a monitor. That is another evolution that does exist. It's already out. I don't think it's as mainstream yet as the, watching the monitors of computer games. But there are games like this. There are games where you can put the helmet on or the glasses on and you can get into a virtual world. And I do believe that is the next evolution. I believe this is what will happen. We will transition into this, but I think it's a tough one. It requires a lot more technology to make it real. But yes, it is definitely happening. And something like this, boxing, yeah, it does exist. But it was really just about the fitness games is what I was getting at, right? Because Nintendo Wii is one of the ones now where you can play sports, physically play the sports. You can put the gloves on and you can actually box and you see your hands in the screen. But that was one. So that was one of the ones that I wanted to point out as some of those pros that you can have when you are gaming. Yeah. All right, so virtual reality is coming, but I didn't add it here yet because it's not at the top of the chain yet. Right now, I think online gaming is number one. But soon, Gappy, start saving your money now and invest in virtual reality companies. You'll be a rich man. Start your YouTube channel. All right, this next one here. I think now we're going to go into some of the negatives, some of the disadvantages, some of the cons, all right? Now, I didn't want to spend too much time on the negatives because I'm a gamer, of course. But no, that's not the real reason. The real reason is I just didn't want to go into the reading thinking badly about everything. But we do need to point out some things about gaming that you have to be aware of and you have to be careful with, all right? Now, in this example here, it's quite simple. I don't like how they always say it's the guy who's always the one doing something wrong, but we'll go with it for today. So he obviously does not want to spend time with his girlfriend, or I'm pretty sure it's his girlfriend. He's far more interested in playing his games, and she is obviously getting very, very upset and tired with this scenario, this idea that what's happening. And you see this a lot with parents too, getting angry with maybe you or your brothers or sisters or friends because they're just spending too much time, right? Yeah. I think this is addictive. Yeah, addiction. What do we got here? Yeah. Addiction, addictive, an addictive substance is an adjective. Addiction is the noun. Addict is the person. He's an addict. He's a gaming addict. He has an addiction. He is addicted to a game. Addiction is one of the worst. We only did one picture, and I'm just gonna tell you about some of the negatives, of course, the cons. This, of course, is not something you want to see happen in people's homes, but it does happen. So there is the problem of playing those games too much, and when you start playing 4 and 5 hours plus, I'm not going to have a set time, but if you play too much, it is bad for you. You still have to study, you still have to work, you still have to be active. You need to manage how often you play. Is playing bad or good? Depends on you. Depends on how you manage it and how you use your time. Okay, so you got to be careful about that. Another tip I can give you about gaming is you don't want to come in and play video games like this. Okay? It's not good for your eyes. Studies I've read say you should be at least 4 feet, which would be, you know, 1.5 to 2 meters, 4 to 6 feet away from the screen when you're playing video games. That's not so bad. So you try not to stick your face into the monitor when you're playing. That's not good for you. For sure, it's not good for you. And the other thing is that I would say, we got some comments here. Trevor, be quiet. You're making my parents stop me from playing video games. Poor girl, yeah. But maybe she just never stops bugging him and it's the only chance he gets to play. Maybe she doesn't let him play for more than 10 minutes. We don't know the story. It's just a picture. It's just a short video. I'm sure he's got a side to this story too. But that's not the point. The point is it can be addictive. So don't let it be addictive. All right, the other one I wanted to mention about video gaming, of course, is that same thing. If you're going to spend too much time on it, you have to balance health and activity, okay? You can't spend every day off sitting at home all day playing FIFA football and say, I played football all day. No. You need to get out of the house. You need to get some activity. You need to sweat. You need to run. You need to play active games too. Otherwise, you will have problems and be unhealthy when you get older. All right, so the next one here. Okay, this one here was about addiction as well. And this was really one of my keynotes that I wanted to mention. And it's really just it's just a bit of a conclusion to what we were talking about. If you like eating cake and you like eating pizza and you like popcorn as much as I do, it's a balance again. So the word I want to get here is how to manage things. You can have pizza on the weekends, but if you have it every day, it's a problem, right? You can drink Coca-Cola. Oh, I better not use Coca-Cola, I might get in trouble. Soft drinks, things with too much sugar, sweets, fast food. If you just do it once or twice a week, it's no big deal. There's nothing wrong with that, right? But you can't do it every day. That is a problem, and it will cause you long-term problems. All right, so there's a word for this. Everything in is okay. Self-control is to be able to control yourself, to say no, yeah. And it's like manage. The word is moderation. That's the word I wanted you to learn today. Moderation. And that's what it is. It's like I was told when I was a kid. You know, within reason, I'm going to say, you know, most things are not that bad for you as long as you do it in moderation, okay? Meaning, once or twice here and there. You like bacon and eggs? I love bacon and eggs. I just had a bacon and egg sandwich before this show, and it was good. But you can't have it every day. Bacon is not good for your heart. It doesn't matter how good it tastes, all right? But if you have it every Saturday for breakfast, unless the doctor tells you that you're not allowed to eat bacon, go ahead, have a bacon sandwich. Okay?
My father said you're wrong. Pizza every day is good for us.
I agree with your dad, but I gotta talk to everybody. Because I could put pineapple and onions and mushrooms on it, right? Yeah. I guess that's the big thing too. Pizza, I shouldn't have said pizza. A lot of people consider pizza as a fast food. But if you actually make your own dough and you use good wheat, all grain wheat, and you make your own pizza sauce with fresh tomatoes and herbs and spices like we do here, we love pizza. It comes down to the toppings, all right? If you have bread, which is dough, pizza like that every day, and you use herbs and spices and just a little cheese, real cheese, not processed cheese, and you're putting onions and mushrooms and you're putting pineapple and different things like this, yeah, pizza can be good for you. Pizza used to be food for poorer people in the Mediterranean before. That's how it got started, okay? When I say pizza once a week, I mean when you order from restaurant chains and things where you got the pepperoni and the sausages and all that stuff on it. And the dough has been made in factories and the sauce has been made in a factory. You don't want to eat that every day. So I stand corrected. Like I said, I don't always have the right answer and I try to generalize. But a lot of things can be made healthy, for sure. And a lot of things can be made not healthy and deceptive, making you think they're healthy when they're not. So be careful. Practice, exercise your brain, pay attention, read a lot. Just in moderation. Something in control, in moderation. Yeah. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. No comment. No comment. Ask me that question on Facebook. But I'll tell you, beer too, it's the same thing. A couple of beers here and there if you're an adult, no problem. 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 beers a day, not good. Not good. I don't know anybody who does that. It's just really bad. Okay, back to the vocabulary. No more pizza, no more beer. Pong. All right, remember the phonic on that. Pong. And it was a game. It's not ping pong. It looks like ping pong. We got Atari. Atari, not even sure. It was in Blade Runner as a future big company, but that's because they were a big sponsor in that movie a long time ago. Had their own skyscraper. But I don't even think Atari's still in business. Or they might have been bought out. Not really sure. But I haven't heard from them in a while. Industry, right? Industry is the field of that business, that commerce. You know, the farming industry, the gaming industry. Arcade, right, is what they used to call these gaming areas. Space, CE, we have an S sound. Space invaders, right? Aliens attacking. And Pac-Man, of course, which is probably one of the biggest of all time games that came out. Frogger, kind of little trying to cross the street and cross the river without getting run over by a car or eaten by a crocodile. Pretty silly now, but it was fun then. All right, next. Okay, so here we got our 3D dimensional character running back here, our soldier. The soldier that has a sore shoulder. Try to say that one 3 times fast. The soldier who had a sore shoulder. Dance Revolution was a big one. Consoles was the next evolution of home games after the arcades. This is where we had all our Sony PlayStations, Nintendo Wii's, Nintendo 64, I think was the picture we had before. And the other one was Microsoft's Xbox. There was one we didn't talk about here, but I think we're going to talk about it in the reading. When the console games came out, they actually started getting online game going. And it was actually not Sony, not Microsoft, and not what's the other one again? Microsoft, Sony, and Nintendo. It was actually that company called Sega. They came out with a console called Dreamcast or Dreamcast. I think it was Dreamcast. And that was the first one that came out in the 90s where you could actually connect to the internet and play other people. But, for some reason, it didn't work very well. Okay, so we got some of the games, not too important here. Mario Brothers, Madden Football, FIFA Football. This is kind of... Mario Brothers came out in 2D graphics, of course. But then later, as it evolved, that was a huge success as well. There was a whole series of games. Mario Brothers 1, 2, 3, 4, and all over the place. But that was that transition time again for 3D games. Right? Transition, and 2D graphics, and then next 3D graphics, which again was a big jump to be able to do games like this. Okay. So again, after, I guess all in the same process, but 3D games came out. That made gaming so much more fun. Consoles were so much more fun. We now started getting games going online back and forth with PC, personal computer. And now we're in an era, well, quite some time now, since the early 2000s, I think the first ones, where we have gaming platforms where thousands, millions now. Like I said, I think Twitch Prime or Amazon Prime, they have something like 50 million members now. It's amazing. So you have those gaming platforms that are very, very big now. And then we talked a bit about the pros and cons of gaming. And then some of the advantages and disadvantages, of course. Concentration was a big one. Concentration, right? Concentration. And then we also have decision making. Now, life is going to help you learn how to make decisions. But I think what we're talking about, these decisions, it's making quick decisions, right? Left, right away, or strategies and stuff. Okay, so let's go to the next one. And it's a good word to practice. Decision. Good. So another good one to learn. Improve. Don't forget that V sound at the end. With the M. Improve. We got planning, strategy, fitness games, addiction. You don't want to have an addiction. And we have moderation, the last one down here. Moderation is the ability to have some self-control and to manage what you're doing. Some of this, some of that, what's good, too much of this, too much of that. You have to be responsible for your own actions. So take things in moderation. All right. So now we're going to go to some reading. All right. What do we got next here? Okay, so like always, I'm going to read through it. And some of the words that are more difficult, I will read them again. And then I'll read it at normal speed. We'll go through the information, and then I'll ask you some questions. All right, so in the beginning we had Pong, right? So video gaming has come a long way since the days of Pong and Atari. We can now play games online for competition or just for fun at home with our family and friends. DS is always tough. DS down there. Dzz. Turns into a Z, but you have to hold the D back. Friends. The industry of video gaming, right? The industry of video gaming was introduced in the late 70s and 80s. Okay. Now, if you research gaming, video games, the first video games that were invented, it's there, and I'm pretty sure it was early 70s and maybe even late 60s, but it's closer to 70 than it was 80. But it was really the late 70s and early 80s when it started coming to our living rooms. So that's where we started the story. So nobody comment and say, you're wrong, it started in the early 70s. Yeah, it did, but it wasn't in your living room. So this is where we're going to start the story. From the living room. So it was the late 70s and early 80s is when it started coming. So I'll read that again. So at that time, it was those ColecoVisions and Televisions and Ataris. Those were the first ones that came to us. All right, so let's try to read it together. And if you're sitting there and you're watching, and the lag is not too bad, try to read with me as you watch as you can hopefully see with our new big screen. You can see the words here. Video gaming has come a long way since the days of Pong and Atari. We can now play games online for competition or just for fun at home with our family and friends. The industry of video games, or it should be the industry of video gaming, was introduced to us in the late 1970s, early 1980s. Now, I notice a lot of you when you read this, the 80s and over there the 70s down here, you never actually say the S. But what that means, for those of you who have asked me before, is it means those years in the 80s. So from 1980 up to 1989. That decade, remember 10 years is a decade. 100 years is, I'll leave that there for someone to answer. All right, so when I say the 70s, I'm talking about a period of 10 years. Maybe it was only 6 or 7 years, but it was in the 70s, okay? Or in the 80s or the 90s, okay? Or the 2000s. The 2000s could be a millennium, 1,000 years. All right, so let's move on to the next one here. Yep, no, let's go back. Number 2? We're still on video games, yeah, okay. So continuing on. Nowadays, we have companies such as Sony with PlayStation, Microsoft with their Xbox, Nintendo Wii, W-I-E-E here. That's the one that we can actually play a lot more of those activity games. It's very popular. And the price point is lower too, so it's a very popular game. Machine, console. That are very popular in most countries. In the beginning, it was the arcade that brought us games like 1978 Space Invaders, the 1980 Pac-Man, 1981 Frogger, and later another huge success story was the Donkey Kong. It was a big gorilla or kind of looked like a mini King Kong, and he was going around jumping over barrels and all kinds of stuff. He was a big success as well. And even active games like the 1998 Dance Revolution. This is just to name a few. Yeah, like I said, there are so many games that came out at these times. We couldn't even list them all on this if we wanted to. Yeah, 10 years, decade. 100 years, century. All right, and 1,000 years again is a millennium. Millennium. All right, decade, century, millennium. Very good. All right, so let's read through this again at a more normal pace. Nowadays, we have companies such as Sony with PlayStation, Microsoft with their Xbox, Nintendo Wii that are very popular in most countries. In the beginning, it was the arcade that brought us games like the 1978 Space Invaders, 1980 Pac-Man, 1981 Frogger, and of course many, many more. And Donkey Kong, and even active games like the 1998 Dance Revolution. Again, this is just to name a few. The tip of the iceberg. Just a few of the games that came out and big successes. All right, so that's about the video games. Next one. What do we got? Okay, so now we're going to talk a little bit about the gaming today. A little bit more information about the gaming industry. Gaming today, after the arcade boom, right, in that 80s when everybody was playing in the malls and you had all these video game boxes and video game machines, consoles were the next wave of gaming. They had games like Mario Brothers, Legend of Zelda, the football, the FIFA football, and so many more. The transition again, the changing of games, changing of guards, however you like to call it, from 2D to that of 3D in the early 90s was a big improvement. And in the 1990s, or sorry, not 1990s, but this is the one I was talking about. In 1998, again, as they kept evolving, Dreamcast here, Sega Dreamcast, was the first to introduce online playing. 2 years later, Sony followed up with the PlayStation 2. In 2001, Nintendo 64 DVD-ROM, if it's a long name, Nintendo 64 DVD-ROM Cube Box. And I remember that one, but I didn't buy that one because I had the PlayStation 2, that's why. And of course, Microsoft joined the race, joined the game, started coming in and became a big player when they came out with their first, or one of their first, Xbox Live. I think the first Xbox that hit the market was Live. They didn't even have a game before that, as far as I know. I could be wrong. But I remember that time. I was playing PlayStation 2 a lot. And I still played a lot of the older games. So anyhow, let's read through this again. Now we're talking about the consoles, right? After the arcade boom, the boom means that era, like this place, Da Nang, for example, over the last 10 years until COVID came, it was boom town, right? Tourism was growing, hotels were going up, the economy was rolling. They call that a boom. Okay, so it's a very positive, not slang, it's just a saying. So the arcade, that was boom business. It was something that was really hot. So after the arcade boom, consoles were the next wave of gaming. So now the boom was kind of crashing. They had games like Mario Brothers, Legend of Zelda, which was like exploring game, adventure game. Madden Football, and soon 1994 FIFA Football, which a lot of you are familiar with. The transition of the 2D graphics to that of the 3D in the early 90s was a big improvement, and in 1998, big changes again. Sega Dreamcast was the first to introduce online playing. 2 years later, Sony followed up with Xbox 2. In 2001, Nintendo 64, the DVD-ROM Cube Box. And Microsoft joined the race, joined the game with their new Xbox Live. Next. Okay, so now again, we're going in further into the 2000s now. Gaming platforms such as Garena, and I believe that's a company out of Singapore. Garena 2009 opened up, and you had Twitch in 2011. You have YouTube Gaming in 2015, Facebook in 2018, so not long ago. So many of the big companies are now getting into the online gaming platforms. No shortages. The global video game market is valued at over $93 billion. Some reports say that it is a $20 billion industry, right? That field, industry, and it earns almost as much money as the movie industry, motion pictures, Finding Nemo's and Avengers, video games, all is making almost as much money as the movie industry. So, it is certain that video games are here to stay. It is a very big industry. So let's read that again at normal speed. Gaming platforms such as Garena in 2009, Twitch in 2011, YouTube Gaming 2015, and Facebook 2018. Where are we at? Facebook 2018 all opened new doors for the online gaming. The global video game market is valued at over $93 billion. Some reports say, it's really hard to track because it's different in every country. Some reports say it is a $120 billion industry, and it earns almost as much money as the motion picture industry, the movie industry, the filming industry. It is certainly, our video games certainly are here to stay. That's an understatement. Questions? No? All right, so the last one we were going to read about. All right, the last part was about the pros and cons. Nothing is good for you if you do it all the time. Even apples and oranges. If all you do is eat apples and oranges, breakfast, lunch, snack, dinner, and go to bed, if that's all you eat every day, you're going to get sick. So, moderation, little by little. Balance everything. So pros and cons, disadvantages, advantages. What was the other? No, negatives and positives. That's right. Okay. So you all know how much fun we can have playing games. There is a challenge. There is the challenge of reaching the highest level of play, or the excitement of beating your friends in a game. But some experts are now saying that in addition to great entertainment, video games could also be good for you. It appears that when you play video games, you might be acquiring some very important problem-solving skills, such as completing tasks, right? How to do things or completing tasks under pressure, because you have to think so fast. So helping you develop these skills. Better concentration and decision making. It can also improve your ability to plan and strategize, right? So again, these are some reports. It's different for everybody, and you have to manage it yourself. So in no way am I saying that video games is perfect and you should do it every day. It's not true. Has to be managed. So let's read that at a little quicker pace here. You all know how much fun we can have playing games. There is a challenge of reaching the highest level of play, or the excitement of beating a friend in a game. But some experts are now saying that in addition to great entertainment, video games could also be good for you. It appears that when you play video games, you might be acquiring, you'll notice might be, no absolute proof, might be acquiring some very important problem-solving skills, such as completing tasks under pressure, think fast, better concentration, and decision making. It can also improve your ability to plan and strategize. All right, so the last part of this one for advantages and disadvantages, pros and cons. Okay, so other benefits are the fitness games, of course, where you can actually get exercise, do some exercise, which are fantastic for helping you exercise or practice game techniques in your, like football, tennis, golfing, techniques in your home when the weather is not so nice there or outside. Are many advantages. What do we got here? There are many advantages, and I personally do agree that gaming in the right environment can be good exercise for your brain, for the brain. Gaming can have some disadvantages. For instance, playing for hours can be very bad for you. Keeping active is most important. Don't forget that. Your mental health and physical fitness. You never want to become addicted to anything, okay? So, above all, your mental fitness, your physical fitness is the most important. You must balance, okay? So we'll read that one last time. Other benefits, right? The positive side, the good things about it, are the fitness games, which are fantastic for helping you exercise or practice game techniques in your home when the weather is not so nice. There are many advantages, and I personally do agree that gaming in the right environment, very important, can be good exercise for the brain, okay? Gaming is good for thinking, using your brain. Gaming can have some disadvantages. We talked about them. For instance, playing for hours can be very bad for you. Keeping active is most important to your mental and physical fitness. You never want to become addicted to anything. All right, so this is very important that you check all this stuff. Okay, so that being said, there was a couple of little quick notes here. Hard time seeing without my light glasses. You can see how big the video gaming industry is. Somewhere around the hundreds of billions of dollars, right? So, and it's not going away. There's going to be more games coming out. So you're going to have to make sure that you balance it. I've said that too many times tonight already. So that's it. Yeah, it's game over time now. We're all done. So along with investing in yourself, invest a little time in watching our shows. Of course, with myself, English with Trevor on YouTube, English with New Way, which is our center here in Da Nang, and Miss Lay, English with Miss Lay. And from all of us in Da Nang, I want to say thank you for watching again. Good night, everybody.